After a strong finish to the 2022 season, the Detroit Lions and their fan base enter 2023 with high expectations. But are they warranted? Let's go ahead and discuss. And what's crack-a-lackin' is your boy Broshmo, just in case you did not know. So go ahead, become bro and subscribe. Leave this video a thumbs up if you enjoy the content as always. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Let's have that nice, beautiful football discourse as we continue the deep dive series with the Detroit Lions. We're going to go over the coaching staff, the scheme, and the roster. At the end of the video, I will give you my prediction for the Detroit Lions in 2023. Remember, in this series, I don't do it based on a power ranking, but I do it based on a draft order, because at the end of this series, we wrap this into a pretty little bow and do a 2024 NFL mock draft. So without further ado, let's go ahead, get into this sucker with the coaching staff. Don't mind me. I'm going to throw my little blue lens glasses on right now because my eyes are killing me. But looking at the coaching staff for the Detroit Lions, I love this coaching staff. I love Dan Campbell. He is one of my favorite coaches in the league. The guy's a culture guy. He is smash mouth. I loved him from the minute he took the podium, put on a race car helmet, and just became a meme. But this dude, like, legit gritty. He was a former Dolphins tight end coach. Remember him back in the day. I say back in the day. That was like all of like what, 2015, I think. But he was the Saints assistant head coach and tight end coach, and just suddenly gets this coaching job out of nowhere, right? Everyone was kind of like, whoa, what the heck happened? How did this cat get this job? But he has set the culture here for the Detroit Lions, and that's done so much. This has been a roster that has just kind of been slogging by bottom feeders. Just get the grocery bag, cut some holes in it, put it over your head, because as a fan, you probably feel like trash. Hey, I get it. I'm a Dolphins fan. We're trending up, though. We're trending up. I already did the deep dive series on the Dolphins, though. But I love his additions. Like, this coaching staff is wonderful. Like, we could really get into it in terms of Mark Brunell, former Jaguars quarterback. He's there as a quarterbacks coach. They got Dre Bly as the defensive backs coach, former Detroit Lion himself. They even have like JT Barrett, who used to be an Ohio State quarterback, but a high character individual. And now he is learn under the tutelage of just a phenomenal coaching staff in general. You got John Fox, who's just another really good culture guy there as a defensive assistant. Antoine Randall, that cat's there as a wide receivers coach. It's just super, super nutty how many former players, which I think that's really good when you set the culture if you have former players on the coaching staff. It's just huge. But when you look at like the leaders of both offense and defense respectively, I think you got two exceptionally solid coaches there. More so with Ben Johnson. Aaron Glenn starting to come into his own, and now it feels like he has all the right pieces there to run the defense he wants to run. And I guess we can get started with the defense. He's a former DB coach for the Saints, and actually played 15 years in the NFL. So another guy who was a former player. And defensively, kind of, sort of, he wants to do some similar things as Dennis Allen, at least when you look at the coverage, because this is a team that wants to run man coverage. Like, they want to run it, and they want to run it out of the wazoo. So much so early in the season, they sending pressure. You had cover zero. Gradually, they shifted more to cover one, cover two in the year. And for the most part, the second half of the season was, I would say that in coverage, they were fairly average to slightly below average, instead of at the beginning of the year, they were just terrible. But he wants guys that can come in there and man up one-on-one. And that was very evident in terms of their off-season guys that they went after, because that's somewhere they wanted to really get better at, because this is where things kind of flip when it comes defensively from Dennis Allen to Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn loves bringing pressure. Like in 2021, he was 7th in bringing pressure. Last year, I think he was in the top 3. And I say bringing pressure, bring blitz, like bringing extra rushers in there to just conflict stuff, opposed to like Dennis Allen, who's more of the slants guy. He's consistently about in the top 5. He wants his defensive front to win, but he's going to try to scheme some stuff up to give one-on-ones, whether it's like I said, slants, loops, you got stunts. So he's bringing the pressure. So you're not putting your guys on the island for long out there. And now it feels like finally it's like Voltron. They have gotten the right pieces and its defense should be trending in the right direction. We'll talk more so when we get to the actual roster, how I think that defense will fare. Because I think, me personally, I'm a little bit more down on the defense expectations wise than I think than the general community. But then you get Ben freaking Johnson, who could have easily got a head coaching job, I think, this past off season. He decides to stay with the Lions, and he takes that Dan Campbell, like, okay, smash mouth running game. Let's see what I can do from a passing standpoint. He was the passing game coordinator prior to last season, and I thought he did wonderful things. He drew up some beautiful plays that really complements the run game, because for the most part, this is the team that just wants to beat you the hell up. They're very much a power gap running scheme. That's just what they do. You're not going to see a lot of zone blocking when it comes to what they do, I guess, scheme wise. But when it came to the passing game, I thought he does a great job of scheming his guys open, not asking receivers to have to go one-on-one or have to win solely route to route, but he schemes stuff open. He incorporates the play action pretty spectacularly. He uses a lot of motion. I love that about him, and it just feels like everything's kind of aligned. And honestly, like, we'll talk about Jared Goff, how this is the perfect offense for him. It really is, because it kind of like calls back to his days at Cal when he was in that air raid. But I'm a big fan of just Ben Johnson. He's probably, I really think he ends up getting a head coaching job next season. But I love this coaching staff. It's one of my favorites in the league. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get to the roster, because that's the nitty gritty. Like, if the roster ain't good, they're not going to win a lot of games. If it is, they're going to be very competitive. And let's just say I like parts of this roster. I think it's trending up. But before we get to that, I want to give a quick shout out to Underdog Fantasy. Thank you for being the sponsor of the video. Underdog Fantasy is currently one of the most premier fantasy betting apps, and they got a best ball tournament with $15 million in cash prizes. So if you sign up at Underdog Fantasy using promo code Broshmo, they will match your first deposit up to $100. Remember, use promo code Broshmo when you sign up at Underdog Fantasy, and they will match that first deposit up to $100. We're knee deep into fantasy football draft season, and there's not a better place to play fantasy football. But they also got a variety of other sports, even esports. If you want to go ahead and bet those, go for it. I couldn't bet esports. I know close to nothing about it. But as always, bet responsibly, my friends. Let's get into this offense. Let's take a look at who I have as the starters. To be fair, when I do these, I put offensive starters. It's really the guys that I think are going to be the snap leaders. So there's a little bit of a difference there. Like, guys that are going to be on the field the most often, which is quite often why I put these sub packages, these 3 wide receiver sets. And let's start with Jared Goff, because he did a wonderful job last season. Do I think he is a top 10 quarterback? I hesitate with that. I think he's definitely a top 12 to top 15 quarterback, and everything he does well is incorporated into this offense, because like Jared Goff, by halfway through the season and like from there on out, was fabulous. You didn't see the unwarranted bad decision making of Jared Goff like you did earlier in the year. He really just was doing a good job of seeing the field well, going through his progressions, and placing the ball where his receivers can create after the catch, because that was such a huge component last season. His guys being able to create after the catch, especially like Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's a really good after the catch weapon, in my opinion. So he's not exactly like the best deep ball passer, but I think they take enough shots, especially with Jameson Williams, which I know he's suspended, but he'll be back after he serves a 6-game suspension. It's not like he's injured and he's like not practicing. Like the minute he's off suspension, immediately injected into this offense. There's no having to like put him on a pitch count or anything. And I think that'll help a ton with the deep ball game. And there's other guys that can take care of that, but that's not really where Jared Goff was really, really good last season, was on the intermediate or even the short. Like if they needed to get a certain amount of yards, he was capable of doing that. However, I do think they're currently lacking the necessary weapons to facilitate a lot of what made Jared Goff really good last season. And I will say this, with Jared Goff, I don't like, if I'm the Lions, I'm still looking for better. Like, I like Jared Goff a lot, but is he someone that will get you over the curb? Is he in this elite status? He's not. And that's what teams are looking for. So when it comes to draft, if they have a shot at a guy like that, then you take that shot, right? They, in their minds, didn't have that guy. There was Will Levis. They decided not to go with that. They already had CJ Stroud. They already had Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young off the board. And it's really hard to, like, outside of like them trading draft capital, it's hard to see them to be in another predicament where they can take a franchise guy. But I think Jared Goff, as long as you surround him with weapons, you surround him with just a good situation, you continue to build that defense, then you're going to be consistent competitors year in and year out. This team was a top 10 defense. And I mean, to be fair, a lot of that was, well, they had to be. Like, and I say defense, top 10 offense, because their defense was so poor. They had to be. They were in shootouts constantly. I'm a Dolphins fan. I remember that game, dude. What, they were weren't they in the 40s or 50s of that game? Let's see. Dolphins, Lions game. 31-27. Still super high scoring affair there. But they kind of have to be. They have to be putting up points because they can't trust their defense to consistently make stops. Though I do think their defense is trending in the right direction. But as far as right now, Jared Goff's fine. He is, I wouldn't say he's necessarily a bridge option. Like, I don't think he's just a bridge quarterback. But I still think you should be keeping your eye on maybe looking to somehow upgrade the position. It's just going to be kind of hard when you're consistently competitive now. They do bring in Hendon Hooker. He's definitely not seeing the field next year. I mean, so much so they bring in Teddy Bridgewater. It's like, Hendon Hooker, he ain't playing. We ain't gonna worry about that. He's gonna be someone that we're gonna try to groom and develop into maybe the next star. And he's got a solid arm. He is gonna have to work from, like, coming from that offense that made things a lot easier. But to be fair, like, Ben Johnson does such a good job at spacing that it's kind of a good fit for Hendon Hooker. It really is. Do I think he can be an elite? I don't know, man. I don't know. That's why I was a little hesitant. Older guy, his tools are his tools at this point. Coming off the ACL, I'm not too worried about that. But I understand. He is a great culture guy as well. He's going to be a good leader in that locker room. Very likable, just individual. Just what is the ceiling on him? And I'll be interested because he was one of my favorite players when following college football. But it did seem everyone was like high on Hendon Hooker compared to me, where I felt better about him in that like midday 2 range, which is where he went. But I did say this team is lacking receivers. I love Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameis Winston when he comes. Jameson Williams, when he comes back, he will consistently kind of be that deep threat. I mean, his first reception was a 41-yard tutty, but he will be that threat, but I still feel like they are missing some more potential firepower. Not to say they didn't try to go out and get it. Let's take a look at the depth there. As Josh Reynolds is just a phenomenal wide receiver 4 on the squad. And to be fair, when they brought in Marvin Jones Jr., he kind of felt like a good mentor, just a good leader in that locker room that can be that wide receiver 4. The problem is, even with a healthy Jameson Williams, it's like, okay, well, one of those guys do have to be the 3, because Amon-Ra St. Brown last year played about 60% of his snaps in the slot, so he's going to be in the slot majority of the time. So you're going to have someone out there that can play the outside. Both Reynolds and Jones can do that, but it's not like that they're potential top tier guys. They do trade for Denzel Mims, solid pickup. As the little we've seen from him when on the field for the Jets, he was really good. And I like that. I like that he's kind of he is a different type of player than your Jameson Williams, who's just this flat out speedster that can get vertical, great stop start ability. He's different than Amon-Ra St. Brown, crisp route runner that is just has very sure hands that can create after the catch. Mims more of this big body coming in at 6'4". I want to say he's like 210, 215. 207. So they got him at 6'3" technically, but whatever. So he's kind of more of a bigger body guy that can make the contested catch, but also has good like long field speed. So maybe more than just a possession guy. So he's a little bit different than what they currently have on the roster. Antoine Green, nice pickup at the end of the 7th round out of North Carolina. Not the guy that everyone was talking about in Josh Downs, but Green, man, he also was setting the ACC on fire, man. Good speed, good body. Gotta love that. Khalif Raymond's kind of another vertical guy, and it's easy to look at that and be like, okay, those are the 3 guys, or those are the 6. You got these guys are the current 6 guys, but then you gotta fit in Jameson Williams, which I think then that's probably Khalif Raymond. That's the guy to go there. I don't know if you put Antoine Green on the practice squad. In terms of what else they got there at the position, I really couldn't tell you much about anyone. A bunch of these look like maybe practice squad names at best. Like they're Trey Quinn, he's probably waived. He's not going to make the roster. So, yeah, I mean, but still, that's 6. It's solid. It's just outside of like Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's probably outside of Cooper Kupp, the best slot receiver in the league. But then even then, it's like, okay, then who else? Jameson Williams, still kind of a question mark. Denzel Mims, just haven't seen enough of them. You got some sure veterans here, and like Josh Reynolds, and like we've seen Josh Reynolds in parts last year really step up. We saw him do that with the Rams a few years ago. And then Marvin Jones, just solid vet. It's like there isn't that, ooh, watch out. But they do have weapons in the pass game outside of their receivers, which is good. You have, I put Jahmyr Gibbs. I put him as a starter because I think he, in terms of what he's going to do in the passing game, it just means he's probably going to see the field more than a David Montgomery. Like David Montgomery, really good power back that can create after contact. I think last season, on 201 carries, he had 46 forced missed tackles. Solid. To be fair, his yards after contact rate wasn't great, but also he's now thankfully dealing with a much better offensive line than he was in Chicago, so I expect him to be better at that. But he's not someone that's going to blow you up in the passing game. Like, he's a solid passing back, but receiving back, but he is very much, he runs the receiving route tree, like swings, screens, wheels, stuff like that. But Jahmyr Gibbs, he kind of opens it up for you. Really, really does. Like, he was easily the best. I don't want to say easily, because Bijan was a really good receiving back as well. But like, I think Gibbs has got that kind of like that little extra stank in terms of explosiveness after the catch and whatnot. But yeah, like, it's going to be interesting to see how they use Gibbs. Like, what is his workload going to look like on the ground compared to a weapon in the pass game? You can line him up in the slot. You can line him up outside. You can do a lot of fun things with him. So I'm just happy they got someone that's going to be very involved in the passing game. Even though I do feel like it was too high. I know. Unpopular opinion by me for Lions fans is I didn't like their first round in terms of value sake, but I did like the players. I like Jack Campbell. I like Jahmyr Gibbs. I just didn't feel like those are two very big difference makers when it comes to wins above replacement than what you want from a first rounder. But I mean, they did get their guys. They got guys that are going to be very good here. How much are they going to tip the scales? That's kind of my big question, and we'll kind of see. Sam Laporta gets added to the bunch here at tight end. He's not exactly like he's kind of different than your traditional Iowa tight end. He's not like this inline blocker, but he's every bit of a receiving tight end. I wish the hands could be a bit more consistent. I think he averaged about a 10% drop rate, which is kind of like, sending alarm bells, red flags, and whatnot. But like what he can do after the catch, he had like 24 missed tackles last season. So like very good receiving tight end. And honestly, the tight end group ain't half bad. Like Brock Wright has really shined when given, I was going to say given the time of day, but like when given the chance. James Mitchell has had his moments. He's a guy that I really liked coming out of Virginia Tech. Just a dog in everything he does, and he can create the catch. He's got good straight line speed. So I like the tight end group quite a bit. Now let's talk about the running game aspect of things, kind of look at the depth here. And then we'll get to the offensive line, which is a big reason of the success of the run game, as David Montgomery, perfect fit for this run scheme, this whole just power, smash mouth, hit you in the face type of scheme. I like that. David Montgomery, good contact balance, and maybe not the fastest guy, but a guy that knows how to create once he gets the rock in his hands. Want to see him remain healthy for the most part. I do think he's probably going to be the lead back, so to speak, in terms of carries over Gibbs. Gibbs are probably going to want to obviously utilize more in the passing game, but I didn't think Montgomery was that big of an upgrade over Jamal Williams to warrant spending. I think they spent like 2 or 3 million extra a year just to get Montgomery. But I mean, regardless, it's still a solid. It's a fine enough contract. I'm not going to harp on it too much. The other depth that they have there, Craig Reynolds, he has shined in parts of this last season. They got Jamar Jefferson, who I actually really liked at Oregon State coming out. Didn't like day 2, day 1. I liked him as like a late day 3 option. But they now also bring in Muhammad Ibrahim out of Minnesota as a UDFA. Definitely someone to watch out for. He's kind of built a little lower to the ground. Doesn't mind getting physical. I think that's a good addition that could be a guy that ends up making the roster. Benny Snell, don't see him making it. Ozingbo, don't see him making it either. If anything, it's going to be Ibrahim and Jefferson fighting for, if they keep 4 running backs, maybe they keep 5. I don't know. We'll see. But this offensive line, man, is great. It is. I got Big Daddy V starting at right guard. That's my only question mark on the offensive line, because they do bring in Graham Glasgow, who I still think has starter potential in this league, like above average starter potential. Like, he is a solid guard. However, if he's coming back just as depth, I think that's fine too, because like this is probably Big Daddy V's last season, and if you remember, he wasn't even healthy last year. He really was, he didn't play a snap for the squad. So we'll see. That one's kind of up in the air for me. All the other spots though are basically in stone. They got a really good tackle duo of Taylor Decker, Taylor Decker. I feel like you're like, what? Oh man, he's only 29. I don't know why, man. He just screams 33-year-old to me. So you know what, man? Nah, I was gonna say he's starting to get up there. Nah, you ain't really got to worry about it. 29, beautiful. Pinay Sol, he really just started to emerge last year after getting used to right tackle the year before. Looked beautiful. There, he's probably their best run blocker. This guy is strong. He moves well. And he put it together as a pass protector last season. Again, this is one of the best tackle duos in the league. Frank Ragnow is one of the best centers in the league, and last year was able to play 16 games. Love to see it. You just want him to stay healthy, though. Again, they bring in Glasgow, who can play center as well if they need him to. They got Jonah Jackson, who good run blocker. Still putting it together as pass protector, but I don't think he's like a huge detriment in that regard. So, like looking at this, again, if their worst spot is right tackle, I say worst spot, like most questionable one, and still you're presenting me the options of Graham Glasgow, Big Daddy V, then I'm cool with that. This is one of the best offensive lines in the National Football League. When it comes to the depth a little more worrisome. Again, if you got Glasgow, that's great. They got a Fetty as a potential tackle, like swing tackle / if there's injuries, but they don't really have anything outside of that. Matt Nelson couldn't tell you much about. Obina Eze was I think he transferred from Memphis, went to TCU, and he felt like he had really good movement skills, just very unpolished. And he sat on the practice squad last season, but they felt good about him to bring him back. Maybe he ends up making the roster here. They have Brad Cecil, who's out of South Florida. Couldn't tell you much about him. I will say this, Kobe Swordsdale, I absolutely loved at William & Mary. For me, he was a guy that was this big sleeper that I liked. I believe it was at the NFLPA Bowl. I can't remember. It may have been the Shrine, but I ended up being a big fan of his. He tested out well. He played tackle mainly there, but now he kicks into guard, and I think he could be someone worth investing in the future. Bobby Hart could be a long shot to make the roster. Kind of is what it is. But for the most part, they got young guys there that you probably don't want to have see the field immediately. And then they got a Fetty and they got Glasgow / Big Daddy V. Maybe Bobby Hart makes the squad just because of the veteran presence. I don't know. We'll see. Regardless, this is a really good offense. I have them as a top 10 unit, though there are some question marks for me. When looking at the defense, let's go ahead and move to this defense. I have them still ranked as potentially bottom half of the league defense. I think they're close, but just not there yet. And man, maybe I'm being a bit stickler, but I mean, the defense definitely got a lot better, particularly in the secondary, which, I mean, let's just jump to the secondary. Jeffrey Okudah, he struggled with injury his first 2 years. The play was inconsistent, though I thought he was a bit better during the tail end of the season. Now he got traded. He got moved to Atlanta, and they bring in guys who are familiar with man coverage. Like they bring in Cameron Sutton, who comes from Pittsburgh. The guy can play man. Even more important, his versatility. Someone who can play outside, he can play in the slot, he can even play at safety if you need him to, so they love that versatility. Emmanuel Mosley, who, to be fair, played more quarters at San Fran, but I mean, this is a team that they don't run quarters, but they'll run like quarter, half. So if they want him to be the quarter corner, there we go. He can do that. And to be fair, when playing man last season for the Niners, which, they did do in spurts. That was a big reason why they brought in Charvarius Ward, who was primarily a press man guy for Kansas City prior to him arriving at San Fran, like he was very effective. Like he allowed a 57% completion rate when targeted in man coverage, and yeah, didn't allow a touchdown, had 2 pass breakups. You love to see it. You love to see it. I will say, I mean, like, and you got to think about it, like, quarters is such a broad scheme because there's so many different variations of it that, like, you can even quarter match, and, like, which basically becomes man coverage at a point. So it's like, yes, there's different variations, but it's not like this. It's not, I don't think it's too massive of a difference that you got to worry about Mosley. I think Mosley will be fine. He showed he was good in man coverage when called upon. Looking at the depth at the corner position, because we're gonna have to kind of like talk about like, okay, I guess we could bring, yeah, no. Let's just go ahead, jump over here, and we'll talk more in depth about exactly everything going on here. Because you think, okay, who are going to be the other outside corners? Will Harris? They bring back Will Harris, another guy who is showing a lot of versatility for the Lions. And while it's not always been great, I think it's been better than most. I think he's a good depth play, but I don't want him starting. Jerry Jacobs, you could also say a similar thing with him. It's like, okay, I don't mind him having to come in more as a depth corner, and if he has to start here and there, but like, you got to feel like we need to get better if that's the case, that he's going to be seeing the field a ton. Starlin Thomas, I absolutely loved coming out of UAB. I thought he was probably, just because of his size, pull up his size real quick, that he'd probably be looked at as more as a slot, like basically 5'9.5", 194, a little more stocky, so you can you feel good about him playing closer to the ball as a run defender. But I mean, I don't mind him playing on the outside because he's a guy that's got ridiculous speed, and he can recover ground quick if he loses immediately. So there's, I think he also had sub length, which sub length, if you don't know, with corners, or sub 30-inch arms. It's not the end all be all. It's just, again, you're kind of going away from what the standard is, and you're kind of hoping or banking on the exception. But I'm a big fan of Starlin Thomas, but even then, you kind of like wonder, is he more of a nickel? I actually was a big Chase Lucas fan, someone who just showed a lot of variety at Arizona State. I thought immediately he was going to be a special teamer, and he was going to stay on a squad just because of what he could do in special teams. But they get Lucas, who can play safety, he can play in the nickel, he can play outside. Love that. They also have Stephen Gilmore, who UDFA out of Marshall. That probably should go to safety. I feel like he's more of a deep safety guy, someone that doesn't want to lay hands on players. That's just what I get. So, like, you have guys that actually can play in the slot here. Starlin Thomas, you have Chase Lucas, Cameron Sutton, but you also Will Harris, but you bring in CJ Gardner-Johnson, to be fair, on a 1-year deal, but someone who is at his best when he is close to the line of scrimmage, or close to the box, like whether he's coming in as like a box safety, strong safety, or if he is playing in the slot. I imagine they're going to use him in a variety of different ways. Brian Branch, I think, ends up riding the bench early on. For me, I thought he was going to be one of these, like, he could be a top slot guy. I don't always feel great about his ability to play in the box because of his ability to take on blocks, but I feel good about him there playing in the slot, given a little bit more open space, because he's got a great nose for the football. I loved Brian Branch. I had a first-round grade on him, and it's not to say that he couldn't play in the box. And I also think that, like, you could probably play him deep at certain aspects, but we do know he is not like a high-end athlete, so something you probably don't want him to do consistently. And you already have a menace there who's playing deep in Kirby Joseph. He led the Lions last year in deep snaps, and he was an absolute monster, had a banger season his rookie year. He was a nightmare for Aaron Rodgers. So, yeah, you're probably going to want to keep him as your deep guy. Tracy Walker is someone who's fluctuated and shown he could be versatile throughout his career, whether it's in the box, in the slot, or deep. So, and you got to imagine now with a healthy Walker, they're going to kind of like play him everywhere. And well, like I don't think there's any other safeties that are going to be fighting for snaps. Like Savion Smith only saw, I think, like a handful of snaps last season. Ifeatu Melifonwu was kind of converted from corner to safety. Some people really liked Brady Breezy. I thought he was just limited as an athlete. Brandon Joseph, I actually was a huge fan of after his breakout year in 2020 at Northwestern. Didn't have a solid enough 2021. Transferred to Notre Dame. And just kind of like, for me, like I still had a draftable grade on the guy. He was like a mid-day 3, but it kind of shocked me that he ended up like falling as a UDFA. But he's a good pickup, but probably someone not to start immediately. So it's an interesting. It feels like a versatile secondary, but you gotta imagine it's Mosley and Sutton who are consistently going to be starting on the outside. I don't know who else you put out there. I really don't, unless you're like pulling with Jerry Jacobs, which I don't think you should be. I really don't. Get into the front 7 of this defense. They drafted Jack frickin' Campbell, and I basically think he's the upgrade for Anzalone. They did sign or re-sign Alex Anzalone, though I do think that, again, free agency happens before the draft. They weren't confident they were going to be able to get their guy. They got their guy. So, like, Anzalone, I feel like Anzalone is more of the backup plan here, but I guess they probably start him next to Campbell because I really thought they liked what they had in Malcolm Rodriguez. He looked really good last year, and to pair him up with Campbell, that's a very exciting linebacker duo to have. Even with Derek Barnes, I'm a big fan of Derek Barnes. I think Barnes, especially in this blitz-heavy defense, this is the guy that at Purdue was an edge rusher before he moved to like off-ball linebacker there at Purdue. So someone who has some pass rush experience, and he showed that at the Senior Bowl. Like, he was a menace on the one-on-ones with running backs. Total menace. So interesting, like, names that they have there. I guess really the only other name to bring up in terms of, here, let me switch over here for y'all. The only other name to really bring up, Jalen Reeves-Maben, good depth guy. That's about it. But yeah, Anzalone, what is the contract? I can't remember what he re-signed for. Alex Anzalone contract. It's 3 years, almost 19 million, but and they can't really opt out of it until after the 2024 season. So ideally, that's where you opt out of it. So yeah, yeah. He's just built better than a Malcolm Rodriguez. Do they see Rodriguez as anything more than a depth linebacker that brings good special teams? Because I feel like Josie Jewell kind of got stuck in that role for Denver, and I thought he was definitely a solid starter for them. I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to include the Sam linebackers as when I talk about like the pass rush and the defensive line, which we could go ahead and get to. As I think the pass rush is, I think Aiden Hutchinson will look better next season. Lee McNeil, they've had him slim down, which, if that just makes him even more explosive, that's scary. They have guys that can play that nose role that they like, because, this is an attacking 4-3. So if they want, like, if Lee McNeil slimming down means he gets on the field more, which he was on the field plenty last year, but consistently have him there on the field and retaining some of that explosiveness, then yeah, I'm sure they love that. They liked what they had in Isaiah Buggs.
Though I'm not like wild about Bugs. Like, yeah, he played well down the stretch, but still, he's a better depth player than he is starter. Yeah, I mean, we can. I mean, yeah, let's just go ahead, like, start looking at the depth that they have here. As Levi Wuzarike can't stay healthy. Is he worth bringing up at this point? Benito Jones, I think, probably gets the nod more in the middle than Broderick Martin. Broderick Martin, kind of this penetrating nose, though the anchor is consistent with Benito. Like Benito, when they called upon him, I thought was relatively pretty darn solid. At the very least, I thought it was comparable to what Bugs was doing on the field. Christian Covington, nice little addition, good depth guy. Corey Durden, who they bring in as a UDFA, I was a big fan of, a guy that put on a lot of size since his days at Florida State. When he went to NC State, put on a lot of size to be more of a nose player, but he's got like a decent first step. He knows how to get good leverage. So kind of a long shot to make the team, probably more of a practice squad guy. But a little excitement there from him for me when we're moving to the outside of this line, because you also gotta ask, is this team gonna be much better at I guess you would say defending the run? And because I mean, it's fair to be like, well, they're bringing back a lot of parts from last season, which that team was bottom half of the league when it came to defending the run. I mean, I guess they're hoping some of these guys develop into better run stuffers, but like John Kaminsky on the outside there, where he's someone that can play 4-eye, he can play outside, not like a great pass rusher, just solid, strong player who's gonna play well. He's just going to play well. He's going to defend the run well. Yeah, he's solid. He probably holds off Josh Pascal. And, I mean, allows them to have more time if they want Pascal to develop. I liked Pascal coming out of Kentucky. Like, I thought he had a sick motor. Just played until the whistle. Played with violence. Like that about him. But Aiden Hutchinson, he is the premier pass rusher here. Though James Houston, really good DPR threat. We'll talk a little bit more about him in a minute or two. But yeah, like Aiden Hutchinson, man, just a guy that's well put together, very nimble, but stupid powerful, great hand technique, shows a good bevy of pass rush moves, whether it's push pull. Shows really good inside counters. Like, again, just really good last season. Probably continues to take that next step in his development and just being dominant for the squad. They have Charles Harris. Again, more as this, I guess, DPR pass rush threat, though I feel like James Houston kind of usurped him in that role. Like, Houston was just ridiculous. Like, this guy wasn't even, like, he was only on the field for 140 snaps, 92 of them pass rushing snaps, 17 pressures, 8 sacks. I don't think by any means that's a sustainable number. That's not. It really isn't. So, like, I expect that number to come down depending on how often they utilize him. And to be fair, I think he's solid enough as long as you're not playing him on the line in run defense. But very much someone you want getting after the passer. Former Florida edge, or I guess he was off-ball linebacker at Florida, I think. Ended up transferring to Jackson State because I think he was involved in the credit card fraud thing that Florida had. Goes Jackson State, primarily becomes an edge rusher and was just a complete menace. I remember him in the NFL PA Bowl, caught my eye, absolutely wrecked, loved it, and I felt like he was very underrated prospect. During the whole process, they end up snagging him in the 6th. I think I had like a midday 5th round grade on him. But yeah, I was glad to see him just be so effective when on the field last season. Kind of what they were hoping to get from like a Julian Akawara, who is just, if he hasn't really emerged to really do much of anything at this point, you're probably not going to get it from him. To be fair, injuries have played a role, which is kind of ironic with his brother Romeo Akawara, who injuries have kind of played a big part in his decline. But really, since getting big money, hasn't done much of anything for the squad. It's likely a cap casualty in the near future. But I'm not completely sold on this offensive line or this defensive line ability to consistently stop the run. You got better at the second level with Jack Campbell, but that still means you're probably going to be giving up 4 to 5 yards on early downs when it comes to the run game. The coverage got better, but then there's questions about, okay, like specifically, who plays the outside consistently? Is there going to be this huge revolving door when it comes to the slot and safety position? So I'm just tempering my expectations. While I think they'll be better defensively next year, I don't think it's quite there yet, but it could very well be. I don't see them being like a top 15 defense, but if you want to say they're in this like 16 to like 25 range, I'd be hard pressed not to agree. So I still think very good squad that's trending in the right direction. And especially when you look at the division around you where there's a lot of questions. So let's just go ahead and get into my predictions when it comes to the Detroit Lions. They are currently 9.5 over under. I'm not touching that. I'm not. Because I think I currently have the Lions with a 9-8 record, and I think that's lowballing it. I think probably 8 to 9 wins is their floor, but they could probably be like a 11 or 12 win squad when it's all said and done. I have them winning the division, and as you can see, I have them struggling against like good teams. Not struggling, but I found myself consistently going with better teams than I say better teams. I found myself when pitting the Lions up against other high-end playoff caliber teams that I ended up picking the other team. And that's just kind of how I feel about the Lions. I don't know. Maybe I'm just low on the Lions. And I'm willing to admit it. Like, this is a team I really, really like. I just don't feel like they're just there quite yet. I mean, we could go by game. I have them going 5-1 in the division, first of all. I think the only game they split is probably a Minnesota game. But we'll get there when we get there. It's going to be interesting, the Kansas City game. It's in Kansas City. I don't see them winning that. But I mean, they surely can. Like, if any offense was going to keep up with the Kansas City Chiefs, I think it would be this offense, which is wild to say because I just spent like a portion of this video saying I don't love what they have at receiver. I think it's very mid. But yeah, I got Kansas City win that one. I actually have Seattle winning at Detroit because, I mean, Detroit is coming off the mini bye since they're a Thursday night game. But I think really highly of Seattle, even if Geno regresses, which I kind of expect him to a little bit. I did end up giving the Falcons a win. This honestly could go the way of the Detroit Lions, and it's fine. I have the Lions actually losing to the Panthers. I'm a little high on the Panthers, and this is off another mini bye as well. So I have a couple of losses in here that you could easily, if anything, they're Detroit's the favorite in both those games. They get them both at home. But yeah, I mean, now we're talking to them as 11-6 rather than 9-8. But I think what I really want to talk about is look, I have them ending the year exceptionally strong. That's not true. I have them coming out of their bye really strong. Dude, I legit, outside of the Bucks, I have the Lions losing to the NFC South. And I'm not gonna lie, I think that's incorrect. Okay, so I guess I should describe my process here. So when I do these projections on how I think teams are going to fare, I actually do multiple predictions with the schedule, and I kind of settle on like the mean, right? The middle, the average. So like I'll do like 5 different record predictions. Oh, they could probably win this. This could go this way or this way. And then I kind of settle on what I think average where they're at. So like, I mean, to be honest, if you're like, oh, they probably beat Atlanta, then I'd probably be like, okay, well then I think Chargers can win this game, even though it's coming out of the bye. I typically favor teams coming out of the bye, but again, this is a much tougher squad than you'd want coming out of a bye, and you don't get them at home either. So yeah, the only loss I have in division is to the Vikings. Like honestly, look at that last 4 games right here. Oh, pardon me. You get Denver, which I expect Denver to be better. Maybe they won't be. But regardless, I have Detroit winning that. But then you get Minnesota home. You get Dallas on the road. I say you get Minnesota in Minneapolis. You get Dallas on the road. And then you get to finish the year, which this ended up being the decider of who wins the NFC North. I had the Detroit Lions. So I guess I'm on the lower spectrum, but this is the team I really do love. I know there's because Lion fans are really, really hot about their squad, as you should be, man, as you should be. But hey, as a Dolphin, like I have y'all technically ahead of the Dolphins. I have the Dolphins with 1 more win, but Dolphins didn't make the playoffs. AFC kind of tough, but I have Detroit making the playoffs, so it's like I try to be very unbiased. And obviously, if you see it a different way, it is what it is. I'm not gonna fault you. Like looking at this now a little bit in hindsight, I do feel like Detroit's a much better team than the record that I gave them. But I'm not saying I picked this willy-nilly. There was an actual process. I ended up settling on this being like, okay, this is on average where I have them about win total wise. So yeah, don't hate the player, hate the process. But that's it for the video. Go ahead, do the YouTube thing, and as always, until next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.